Hi, thank you. Welcome everybody. It's nice to see everyone. Um, yeah, so we've got a reasonably full agenda, but I think we should have plenty of time for discussion on the two main things that are on the agenda for discussion. One of which is the 3-year budget, and we're taking up. But before that, we're taking a discussion run by Steve around um, uh, additional funding sources, basically. So. Yes, I thank you for everyone for coming. So I'm meant to be doing a state of the alliance. So I'm not. What I'm trying to do here is sort of just to have a little think about where we're at, and perhaps some thoughts to try to hopefully provoke a little bit of discussion around membership more broadly and sort of the place of the alliance in the sort of the landscape, really. So, and just moving. Yeah. So these are sort of very rough figures taken off things like RS3 data, what it's called, and other sources which we sort of tried to pull together, sort of just really showing what our membership is, what our associate membership is, and what the all the other users of DDI that we're aware of. And so, in one sense, it's great. We've got so many users of DDI, but obviously, in terms of membership, we're not really attracting people to join, and that's all sorts of very variable reasons, good reasons, and bad reasons. But I think it's just useful to think that when we're thinking about the products, and when we're thinking about communications, that the membership sustains the organisation, but actually we represent a wider community. So sometimes we need to have to sort of check ourselves about what we're doing and who we're serving, as much as our own internal priorities, really. And that's reflective. I mean, this is just the statistical agencies, and this is sort of again a rough figure, but from what we can tell from some initial work, we've got a solid representation amongst statistical agencies, but there's a lot out there who may or may not be using DDI, and so I think this gives an indication of places where there's plenty of room for adoption of DDI, but also potential for more engagement with them, either directly as members or as associate members as part of the wider community. And this is really the same sort of thing, but really from looking at a regional perspective. At the moment, we are very European, American, North American centric organisation in terms of our membership, but the actual usage of the standards that we develop and sustain go much wider than that, where we have very little contact with those users. I think that's something that I think is something we should be thinking about in terms of how we reach those people and how we encourage them to become involved in the activities, and also meet their needs, which in some cases probably not very well we don't understand very well. It's just the same for where our membership is or affiliations are with different sorts of organisation. I think it's interesting that I think when I've always had the impression that the archives sort of dominated the membership, but I think that the areas of research is something which is increasingly where the products are used, particularly for life cycle and for CDI, which have got a lot of potential in research. So that's definitely an area where we could think about in terms of growth. think one of the strengths of the Alliance has always been its community and the participation. I think what's been really good over the last few years has been the activity that the working groups have continued to sustain. Many people spend many hours in DDI meetings, and the fact the working groups are still active is testament to the way that it is engaging with the real problems that people are facing, and DDI products can start to start to solve some of those problems. And also, the particularly over the last couple of years, the new groups, the new RDF group, the questionnaires group, and only was it last month, I think, that the EB signed off the new official stats working group, which I think is going to be really interesting for not just engaging with them, but also what the wider problems that the various statistical agencies can bring to us to improve and evolve our existing products to meet what's increasingly a very challenging data landscape for official statistics, particularly with things like administrative data and AI and things like that. That's going to be something I think that is going to be a really interesting input into the development of the products, and hopefully strengthen the Alliance more generally. There's always been, particularly in Europe, there's always been a lot of involvement of member organisations in European funded infrastructure projects. That's still the case today, in spite of it being a much more competitive research environment in the European space. And with some, there's not as much money around as there used to be in some ways, some parts of it. But the other thing that's happened over the last couple of years really has been there's been a lot of member organisations which have been doing research projects which have been outside of that European infrastructure space as well. And I think that's an area where I think keys into perhaps some of the things that Steve's going to talk about a bit later, about where there are opportunities for member organisations to collaborate across research projects around AI, open science, and things like that. So one of the things that's difficult to gauge just by looking at the membership is actually how the community is changing, or how the community is evolving, and whether it's sort of able to sustain itself. Now, Eddie is just one part of that. It's not the whole community, but it's interesting to look at how Eddie's evolved in terms of the participation and how it's reflected the community. And I think the thing that this chart shows, I think, is that whilst half of the people who attend Eddie have been going before, the other half of the people are either very first-time people or people who are new people from existing organisations. And I think that's really encouraging that the organisations that are participating in DDI are also bringing on new people and continuing to involve them in the activities of the Alliance, or presenting, or being the new leadership of DDI working groups and so on as well. I think it's a really healthy development that we'd continue to create that pipeline of people who can participate and develop the products into the future. Some of us fall off the other end of the working life. And the same thing is really represented in who's presenting as well. So participation is one thing, but actually presenting, people who are confident enough to talk about what they're doing is an important part of of adoption, and be able to explain things. And I think the same pattern here is that there are people in the existing organisations who are coming through able to, confident enough to do presentations to talk about the work they're doing. I think that's a really a good indication of you know the health of the community. And then the last one is really about how and this is just a snapshot, but it's interesting to see that in the early days of Eddie, and it was around when life cycle was started, so there's a lot of measurement bias, I suppose you can call it. But I think one thing that is interesting is that codebook has become much more important at Eddie, and I think that reflects the return of people to codebook after the sort of Nestar hiatus. So I think that's something that I think that the codebook group perhaps should be thinking about in terms of how it's addressing the newer needs of people who are adopting codebook. And I know we've got 2.6 coming out, and hopefully that will address some of it. But again, I think it does show that the needs of the organisations that we represent or that are allied to us continue to evolve, and it's just not the new products where that has to happen, but perhaps it's some of the older products where that has to happen as well. So that's a few thoughts. I don't know if anyone's got any comments or contributions on that. Yeah. I can't see the.
Doesn't look like there's anything in the chat, John.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll hand over to Hilda and Darren for the scientific board report.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm doing the slides today. I'm Darren Bell. I'm head of tech at the UK Data Service. For those of you who don't know me, and I'm currently vice chair on the scientific board, and Hilda Orton is the chair. So yeah, just wanted to run through a few slides and give you an overview of what the scientific board is doing, who the members are, and also to give you a quick summary of what the working groups have been doing over the last year and what some of the things are on the roadmap. I mean, I'm always surprised just how much gets done within the DDI Alliance and the working groups, and it's all done on a voluntary basis as well. So, there's a huge amount of activity, and it's really impressive. And Hilda and I are both very grateful for all the work that happens in the different working groups. Okay, so the members of the scientific board, it's Hilda and myself, who chair and vice chair. Current members are Flavio Rizzolo, Ingo Barco, although I think Ingo will be going sabbatical very soon. Simon Hodson at Codec, Wolfgang at GASIS, Jared Lyle, who's also kind of the executive chair, Wendy Thomas at Minnesota, and Dan Smith at Collector. So, we have a reasonably wide spread. And we'd really like to welcome the new members who are starting next month, which is Amber Lee and Naomi Betancourt. So welcome to both of those. We also have some key contacts as well within the scientific board who have kind of a special responsibility for maintaining liaisons and links with other organisations. I'm currently the liaison for W3C, and I'll mention a little bit more about that in a few slides. Dan Gilman is currently working on making some aspects of DDI into an ISO standard, and the UNECE contact is currently Flavio Rizzolo and Arafan Gregory. So as I mentioned, we have a lot of committees and working groups. There are a number actually that are being formulated, including a new qualitative working group. So the paperwork for those is being done over the next few weeks. But the main ones at the moment are the technical committee, which has really a special role with technical oversight for all of the other working groups to make sure that standards and documentation are consistent amongst the different products and the different groups. We have the training working group, control vocabularies, cross-domain integration, the DDI developers, SDTL, RDF equivalents, questions and questionnaires. So you can see there is quite a widespread of things going on there. And we also have XCOS, the glossary working group. And as I mentioned, Dan Gilman is working on ISO certification at the moment. Knut Ventzig is also working on the setup of another group for DDI implementation. This is looking at how we can make DDI even more interoperable. So this is talking about building a DDI API, which would be, fantastically useful to align the kind of interfaces that people expose in order to exchange DDI data. So also the technical committee is divesting some of its responsibilities because those have become quite big at the moment. So there will be a new product working group for both Codebook and one for Lifecycle as well. So TC technical committee will maintain oversight of the products, but the actual product development will scale out a little bit now. So we'll have individual product working groups for those as well. So in the last year, we've had a number of virtual scientific board meetings. We keep in touch regularly with the executive board. We had a physical scientific board meeting in Chur. We'll have another one in Budapest at EDI at the end of this year. And obviously we have individual liaisons that I just mentioned with things like W3C, ISO and UNECE. And there was an event with together with the EB at EDI 24. So the way that the scientific board operates, the way we define our kind of scope and our purview is really based on the strategic plan that the executive board produces. There are three main topics or pillars. Bonnie will know what a pillar is from previous CESDA strategy, but there are essentially three within the DDI Alliance, which are engagement. How do we foster closer and tighter relationships with different communities and different audiences? Expansion, not just the product line of DDI, but how do we widen our coverage into other for instance, statistical agencies and not just archives and repositories, and alignment, which is a strategic pillar to make sure that the product line has, a consistent look and feel, consistent methodologies, consistent artifacts. So the scientific work plan is predicated on those three pillars. We've tried to make it more goal oriented, so there are some time-bound tasks and some continuous. And the scientific board has oversight of the execution of the plan, but obviously some of that is delegated. A lot of it is delegated downstream to the working groups. So the idea is we try and strike a balance so the working groups have, got the freedom to operate in the way that they best see fit. And we try to encourage those to align with the items in the scientific work plan. So under the first pillar, these are the specific items. So signposting and marketing, how do we encourage people to, design their products and their documentation so that users can find things more easily. Sorry, obviously there's an overlap there with marketing. Stakeholder maps, really, these are just big lists, managing our information in a more structured and formalized way. W3C collaboration is a specific thing in the scientific work plan, and I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. And obviously, a standard is only a standard if it doesn't have tools surrounding it as well. So how do we kind of encourage and broaden, scope and opportunities for tools development? Under expansion, there are a number of additional products that we're looking to put in, like the DDI registry. How do we get better markup examples of products so we can lower the bar to entry? How do we explore possibilities for more DDI adoptions in cross-domain initiatives as well? So that would be in FAIR and CDIF, engaging with the STMX community. I think John alluded to this earlier, but at the moment it's still quite Euro, Australia, North America centric. What initiatives can we promote to push DDI into those areas where, like South America or Africa, for example. So how do we increase the visibility of those? Obviously, we were looking at ISO certification as well, and Dan Gilman's working on that. How to improve, how to use DDI guidance, whether that's technical documentation or, just website pages. How do we build a kind of set of information that really enhances how people use DDI and pursue funding opportunities in geographies where the DDI Alliance has members. Steve will talk about some of that in a kind of later item on the agenda. Also under alignment, some of this is fairly self-evident. These are self-evidently wise and grown-up things to do, but aligning and standardizing technical documentation, technical committees have been very busy over the last year and will continue to be on these kinds of things. Building out a formal information architecture, like virtually organizations, we have lots of buckets of information. How do we streamline that so people can find things more easily and more intuitively? Supporting development. I mean, this is on the roadmap for next year of a more integrated training platform and media library, and a couple of other things about, communication strategies, and, supporting technical committee and infrastructure harmonization. So yeah, the RDF, as you all know, DDI started off as a predominantly XML specification. The world has obviously changed massively. How do we support the development of kind of non-XML serializations, RDF, JSON, LD, for DDI products that don't currently have them? Okay, so that's kind of a potted overview of the scientific work plan. And over the next kind of year, we'll be following up with working groups, and a couple of working groups maybe sunsetted, like I think it was the Paradata working group. I think we retired that recently. And yes, so, as we know, we've got Eddie coming up at the end of the year, so we will be doing a face-to-face meeting there. Okay, so just a quick overview of some of the working group activities. I'm not going to read all of these out because I'm conscious of time, and there's just so much, which is very, very positive that there's so much to report here. But really, the technical committee's main priorities are going to be, as I mentioned, separating out the product development into individual groups. So CodeBot will have a group and life cycle. We're looking now at DDI products as a suite of products. The analogy, not particularly good one, but if you think of the Microsoft Office suite or something, how do we kind of market that, technically document that as a suite of integrated products going forward? There's been a lot of work done on the DDI Alliance website, and increased support for RDF syntaxes, and particularly around control vocabularies, creating a formal and good CI/CD development environment for products so that documentation is automatically created.
Cool, thank you, Darren. Is there any more questions?
Yeah, go on, John.
Contributions from? Sorry, you finished. Sorry, have you, Darren? So did you finish?
I was just talking about TC. Yeah, so
sorry, carry
John,
on. My apologies.
Yeah, all right. Okay. So the main focus really is going to be getting 2.6 out of the door. I mean, that's under kind of review at the moment. DDI 4.0 is being worked on at the moment. We're moving everything over to GitHub. Most of that is completed now. So, we'll be focusing on a new Google Drive as well. That's a lot simpler to navigate for DDI Alliance documentation and improvement of the DDI website. So I'll just give you a very brief update on some of the other working groups. Okay, as you're aware, we've done a new website, ICPSR. People who are much cleverer and more able at this kind of stuff than I am are looking at the navigation and the content and improving that over the next few months. So as we go forward, there will be some changes on the website. I'm having some trouble changing slides here. Sorry, it's a bit slow. Okay, so just a very quick update on W3C. this has been a slightly difficult process in terms of agreements, but we're at the point now at ICPSR have got some agreement with W3C, a draft agreement they're happy with. The next step is to set this up as a formal working group, and then we'll be writing the charter, as it's known, for the W3C group. We're likely to be looking at variable descriptions, but the scope is still to be defined within that working group. I'm going to skip over a couple of these because I'm conscious of time. Qualitative data, there is a CDI subgroup for qualitative data. They have made some suggestions so that we can start adding in quite useful things like annotations within CDI. I think the general view was that if we're doing this for CDI, why don't we try and widen the scope of this? So we look more broadly at qualitative data across the working groups. So we will be sending out a call in the next couple of weeks for volunteers, for anyone who wants to get involved within qualitative data. So ISO certification is proceeding well. The ISO committee now has approved us going on to the kind of publicly available specification, which is essentially the fast track process for ISO certification. So we're working on a draft to be submitted no later than September. So that's proceeding well, and thanks to Dan Gilman for taking that forward. So yeah, it just remains for me to say thank you again. All of this work, and there's a huge amount of it, is done by so many people, for the good of the community and for no other reason really. So Hilda and I are both very thankful for all of that. So yeah, thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Darren. Sorry for interrupting you in the middle. It's not.
No worries.
Good. So, has anyone got any questions for Darren or? Oh, so congratulations.
I think Naomi, you've got your hand up. Oh no,
Yeah,
you're just applauding.
just
Sorry,
applauding your stunning
I
performance.
haven't got my glasses on, so jazz hands.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. So, if anyone's got any questions or thoughts that we'll pick up on, and then on the slide, I think it's also been posted on the website. There's the recording and the notes from the discussion stuff from the scientific board meeting a few weeks ago. So you can look at that if you want more detail on what Darren said. Bonnie.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, as usual, it's very impressive. A lot of work with very few resources. And then, which brings me to you mentioned a potential working group, right, with the world. I forgot VV3, and do you? I mean, you can still manage all the working groups, or yeah, they're all necessary, or would there be a need to kind of think also about to stop one working group, or you think everything is manageable, and then the scientific committee brings it to the executive board, and then the executive board decides? What do you think?
So I'm not sure I understand the question. Sorry.
The question is that I understood that you will create a new working group. And my question is,
yes, for W3C, yes.
How do you assess the work? Is it? I mean, it seems that there is even more work with even fewer resources. Perhaps I'm wrong. It's just I wanted to know what's your assessment, and how you deal with that.
Well, as I say, there are, I mean, a number of people on this call are involved in a number of different working groups. So yes, I think, I mean, there's a lot of activity, but I mean, I've kind of withdrawn personally, from a couple of working groups over the last few months. But yeah, I mean, don't forget that the W3C group, we still need to invite members who want to participate in that. So a call will go out, and similar with the qualitative working group. So I think, yeah, I think everyone here is of the same mind that there's something here really valuable in having an international community within social sciences that promotes these different activities, and some of us are quite happy to do this on a voluntary basis because it's so self-evidently promoting interoperability. But yeah, I mean, I guess we all do what we can. But I think the W3C working group, I mean, this is a special kind of working group because it will actually be joint between W3C and the DDI Alliance. But yeah, certainly, yeah, I think if you're saying, can we handle another working group? I would say yes, because DDI Alliance is probably hundreds of people. I mean, the people on this call are not the only people involved in DDI Alliance.
Hilda.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Bonnie, and you, Darren, for the answer. The way it works with the working group is that both the executive board and the scientific board can approve working groups, and members and other initiatives can propose them. When it is about the scientific and technical work, they kind of report to the scientific board. So if there is a kind of will to start a new working group, they have to apply to the scientific board to get that approved. And the scientific board will then do an evaluation of the content and will approve the group or not based on the content and the organization and the plans moving forward with that group. Also, the EB can set up groups that report under them, and that is how it works. And it is not only the members that are part of the group. Many people that are not affiliated to any institution work freely for the Alliance in these groups. And that is a very, very strength of the Alliance to have this engagement and this voluntary engagement from the community at large. So this is really the core of the DDI Alliance, I would say. But also we are sunsetting groups. We don't keep groups going forever necessarily. Either they complete their mission or they don't. And if nothing happens, we can sunset them. Or if they complete their mission also, for example, the glossary group, it has now produced a deliverable. Not all the groups will go on forever. So that is to keep in mind about that. But I would like, as Darren said, to thank everybody involved in the working groups, because that is how we progress. Thank you.
Okay, was anyone else wanted to? I think from my perspective, some of the working groups have been really valuable in attracting new people who aren't involved in some of the other groups. So like the training group and the questionnaire group, for instance, have been really interesting, that the people who thus far have not been really involved, who've become interested. So I think that's a really interesting development as well. So it's not just about the specific development of the specifications, but also some of the sort of activities around implementation, about documentation and so on. It's really interesting to see people being involved at different levels in the organisation as well, for want of a better word. Cool. So, Steve, over to you on expanding funding resources, and can I hand it over for you to chair any discussion as well? Is that okay? Rather than me trying to do that. Oh.
Yeah.
We can't hear.
Yeah. I'm also hoping that the internet connection is stable. I'm kind of between internet providers at the moment, so I'm running off a mobile connection. So hopefully this goes okay. So you're there as the backup, John, as much as anything. Just a heads up. Okay, so picking up essentially, actually, kind of linking both of the previous discussions. One of the long-running questions for the Alliance, and one we've been trying to focus on, is essentially on sort of expanding our revenue base for the Alliance. So I'm going to just pop up a couple of slides here. So 1 second here, folks. To pop these onto the screen here. There we go. I will move us into presenter mode, but this is really for just for driving conversation as much as anything. We're going to get into a discussion after this about looking at our sort of our funding sources and the both the revenue base and the expenditure that we've been tracking over over many years. One of our challenge at this point is essentially not being able to actively grow our funding base beyond membership fees primarily, with a small bit of additional supplementation, but for the most part our sources have really been on our membership fees. One of the challenges in that situation is if we do go through do raise our membership fees, which you have to do periodically, that does push, particularly in members who might have a relatively small funding base in terms of their capacity to pay. So there is a trade-off that's made there. So what we wanted to do to engage in today was really looking at sort of the areas in which we might grow our funding sources and our income base, and an open discussion there about where and how we might go about doing that in the context of the different sort of areas of engagement that we've had. As John usually pointed out, a lot of our usage of DDI, and we want usage of DDI, but it is amongst those amongst those who are not involved in membership, and there's various reasons for that. But what we'd really like to be seeing is fundamentally where that usage occurs, that we've got a sort of the capacity for tying that to supported funding as we go through. So we've been talking about this and for on and off for several years, but particularly in the last 12 months, a small group amongst the executive, John Johan Fine from S&D, and myself and Jared, been as a subcommittee of the executive. We're looking at some of the options that are there and kind of workshopping what some of those might be. And this is kind of a summary of those discussions. We basically want to be able to bring this to the community to open up what do we think is sort of the viability of some of these different models, because we don't have a specific strategy in mind here. This is really looking at what are all of those the possibilities here, and what is the potential in each of those dimensions, and then and what might be some actions we could take within those. So broadly speaking, the three priority areas that we think are probably that we could kind of service were really in three areas. One was in growth in membership, either in and this isn't an either or, but in numbers and or in amounts. Secondly, in the area of consultancy services, and the third was in the area of grant funding. I mean, that's kind of the three that we could primarily articulate there. There may be other options, and we'd be keen to hear from the community as to what those options might be and how they could support it. But partly what we wanted to do is say, well, okay, well, here are the some of the spaces in which we can work to expand our revenue base, and what are the both the opportunities and the challenges that are there within those, and kind of surface within each of these areas. What do folks think of the potential of these? Is this a viable option? Because some are more attractive than others, and some have higher costs than others if they're not cost neutral in terms of pursuing a particular approach. So what those might be and how we might go about them. So the first area is really in terms of membership itself. That we have had a membership decline. Fundamentally, the numbers are down on where they were 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. And one of the key areas is certainly in terms of maintaining current membership. So maintaining our numbers and growing new membership fund, particularly in those areas, as John sort of worked through there, where are those areas where we have relatively low coverage that we might otherwise expect that to be the case, or that we could potentially expand our usage. Archives have been, social science archives have been, one of the core areas within there, and research groups, official statistics as a sort of we're establishing or have established an official statistics working group as well. But even within those groups, numbers are probably down as compared to where they were. And again, it's kind of two elements to that. One is sort of just capacity in periods of shrinking budgets, but the second is is the set of services that is available consistent with the membership fees that are there. So one of the challenges here is essentially, and this is not a bad thing, is you don't have to pay to use the standard, and the key position here is you shouldn't have to pay to use the standard. To be quite clear, a standard doesn't get adoption if there's an entry fee. So we don't really want to be looking at a case where you would want to be you'd be recovering cost for use of the standard. That's not going to grow use. But the trade-off for that is people can get something for nothing. So how do you convert the benefits that accrue from the use of the standard into providing support for both the development and the ongoing maintenance of that? And that can occur in different forms. But we do have some, financial operational costs. We, proportionally speaking, our actual financial costs as relative to our voluntary contributions we've never costed this directly, but it is probably relatively high. Our voluntary contributions are significant, and they're probably our key resource. But we do still have some ongoing, operational costs that we have to cover, and particularly where we want to be able to support certain areas of activity, things like registries, the secretariat, core operational services. They do need resourcing. So as I say, one area is through maintaining and then growing our membership, and we do have a target for trying to bring in 2 to 3 new members over the next couple of financial periods, and John will talk to that a little bit more. The other areas is in growing membership fees, and there is a small membership fee increase proposed, but again, we do know that there is a trade-off there. As we increase fees, there is a proportional occasional loss of membership that flows from that as well, and so there is a the economics of those fees are important there. So that's the first area that we see as as a possibility for income growth. But that has essentially been the core of our funding model for a very long time, for our our demonstrable operational costs being membership fees. We haven't really moved into other areas. So the second might be then, we're trying to come up with a suitable name here, but for want of a better term, consultancy or on-demand services. Examples here might include software development, training, metadata consultation. These are the sorts of services that can attract a one-off cost, a one-off charge to them, and might be a means for bringing in additional resourcing to the Alliance as a possibility here. The trade-off for those is fundamentally in our that they are not cost neutral. In order to offer such services, you have to be able, it's essentially a revenue minus expenditure amount, and you have to actually have the administration, the infrastructure, and the available human resources, and for participation of a number of our our community. that is part of the activities that are there. We recognise that that is, you know, a contribution that's made of those who are providing some of these services to the community as a whole. And so there is a, again, there is a trade-off here. But as I say, it is also the case that, you know, where that relevant supply of administration and labour to provide those consultancy services would need to be resourced as well, and how we might do that, and how we might do that in a way that, you know, maintains the ongoing voluntary support of our community is important there as well. The third area then really is in terms of grant funding, and this is an area we haven't really done a whole lot with, but, you know, certainly there is some potential here. Now, these are so sort of standards development fits within, you know, a model which is often consistent with some of the funding areas and the grant funding areas that many of us are involved in. The question here really lies in what is the capacity essentially to do two things. One is to, you know, be able to coordinate across the funding sources that many of us are involved in. Now, obviously, the European model is well positioned to be able to do that, but we, you know, certainly at the national level as well. And I know many of you are involved in different national activities that are you know, that participate in the, you know, sort of these sorts of activities. They probably are best aligned with models of capital investment. The Alliance is reasonably well positioned to be able to maintain, but to be able to do, you know, new areas of support, or for activities that require, you know, some of those consultation, you know, activities that we were just talking about earlier, particularly in, you know, and maybe this is another way of supporting software development, or, you know, and the like. It's potentially grant funding, you know, as a possibility that's there. The other element of that we would probably need to think about in, you know, in this area would be actually how to build DDI into proposals. Now, that's framed in two ways. One is, how do we build in, you know, could we potentially, amongst those of us who are, you know, attracting grant funding, build development of the, you know, relevant parts of DDI, the standards and the technologies into our work. The second way to think about this is, you know, is there capacity for supporting, you know, essentially the costs of operating or doing some of the, you know, the capital investment that we need for the Alliance within those programs as well. It's difficult to build operational costs in, but certainly, if, you know, what capacity would there be to, for example, you know, build new developments for the Alliance registry into a funded program. I'm just thinking of, you know, possible examples there, but there's both. What are the sort of activities that the Alliance need there, but can we build the Alliance and potentially have the Alliance itself as a partner? The Alliance through the University of Michigan has the capacity to be legally involved in some of the programs as well. Would that be a possible, you know, activity that's there? The last question then, and this is, you know, kind of putting this out to the community, you know, is have we missed something here? You know, those were the three that, you know, in previous, you know, conversations we've had, that's tended to be the, you know, the three areas where we thought, you know, whether the possibilities there, but maybe we're missing something. So is there other potential revenue streams that, you know, that might be available, you know, that we may be missing, that we haven't thought of, that would be good to, you know, possibly engage with as well? What might those be? What sorts of activities might those support? You know, these are the sorts of questions we kind of wanted to bring to the table. So that's sort of the thinking that they're saying that we had here, but we want to put those on the table here. Sound out I'll stop sharing at this point, but sound out the group here as to what, you know, what folks thinks as though, you know, of some of those options and which ones people might be interested in pursuing, and sound you out as to what are some of those areas there that we may say that we haven't thought of here, that we could potentially work on as well. So at that point, sort of opening the floor up discussions.
Thank you, Steve. Got any thoughts or ideas or contradictions to what Steve said about that? Yeah, so I think one of the things that I think one area potentially would be actually would be trying to the alliance helping to coordinate proposals. Really, one area where there's obviously a common interest and that actually a proposal that was not just clearly linked to the ambitions of the individual course spec, but also was clearly grounded in something that was internationally integrated into our existing standards. I think would be something that would be potentially attractive to some funders who value that sort of model. I think.
I mean, I think the fair with DDI, is probably a good example of that, where it sounds like that's kind of been the orientation within there. This is through the French agency, but I think with some of the folks on this call are partners within that. What are those sorts of possibilities that are there that we can that we might be able to do similarly? Being quite explicit in terms of how we use the standards within some of those funded programs.
I think even at the simplest level, just being able to help put together people across different organisations would be useful. Sometimes it's not always clear that are other people in the community who are doing similar sort of or allied activities who would be good partners in proposal. Okay, well, I think it will be good to try to continue this discussion elsewhere. Perhaps this might be something we could pick up at Eddie, perhaps, where there's more people around than on the call. There might be a place where we have slightly more informal discussions. People don't feel like they're being recorded. Okay, last chance for people to pick up on this. Anyone's got any suggestions or thoughts? No. Okay, cool. Good. Well, Jared, you were going to pick up on the financial report for the last fiscal year.
Yeah, thanks, John. I'm going to share my screen. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So as part of the yearly review, one of the things that we do is provide an overview of the financial summary from this past fiscal year. That's July 2024 through June 2025, including what was budgeted, what was forecasted, and key strategic insights as we close in on year end. So this is an overview of the year. We began the year with an executive board approved budget of about $129,000 US. As of the most recent reconciliation, we forecast we'll spend approximately $102,000, putting us around 79% of the budgeted amount that we expected to spend. We've collected $79,000 in revenue, slightly under the budgeted amount of $83,500. So that means our net income is forecasted to be a loss of about $23,000, nearly half the budgeted amount. So a lower expected loss. What that means is in terms of reserves, we've maintained reserves. So this is the amount that we maintain in excess of our income. The big picture is we started the fiscal year with a strong balance of $351,000. After accounting for forecasted expenses, our current projected fund balance there at the right is $328,000. This decline is less than expected and aligned with budgeted activities. What it means is we remain in a solid financial position as an organization. I have here the detailed expenses for the year. This presentation is linked from the agenda if you want to go in and look at it. Just want to highlight a few of those deviations from what was spent this past year. First, Alliance Travel and Hosting exceeded its allocated budget by several $1,000s. That was due to two things. One, unexpected travel to an IASSIST Africa Regional Conference meeting that the Executive Board decided to support, as well as this ISO certifications. Dan Gilman has attended some meetings in connection with that. So those are both related to Alliance priorities, but were unexpected. On the other hand, we have several groups that have significant unspent funds. So the developers group, the DDI, CDI, marketing and training. And so it's something for the Alliance to consider as we review funding requests and how to align those with what these groups expect to expend. So that's the overview of the budget for this last year. Again, just want to emphasize we're in a strong position, but as John will talk about next, we're hoping to strengthen it even more, looking at a 3-year budget and looking at ways to strengthen, especially the full memberships, which help pay those annual dues that support all of these activities. So happy to take any questions. Okay, well, maybe I'll turn it over to you, John.
Hilda's got a question.
Okay, Hilda, yeah.
Yeah, I have a question, and that is there a deadline for when the applicants will have a response to the funding request, or have everybody been contacted regarding that already? Or I think that would be useful for the applicants to know that.
Yeah, so funding requests came in May. The Executive Board reviewed those requests. The ones that were approved, those have already been notified. There are a few, I want to say 3 groups that have made requests where we had additional, or the Executive Board had additional questions. And those, I believe all of the groups have been notified. And there's ongoing conversations with a couple of those. Those will be taken back to the Executive Board to review and make a final decision on, as will the 3-year budget. So we expect to have notice to those groups by July.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Questions for Jared? Nope. Okay. All right. Well, I'll just bring up the 3-year budget item on my desktop. There you go. Okay. Can people see that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. Cool. Right. So I'm just trying this on my screen here so I can see people. Yeah, so the exec has been thinking about the sort of longer term. Thus far, we've really done a year-to-year budget, and we had a discussion in the EB, and I think that the idea of having a 3-year budget seems a bit more useful for several reasons. One is partly to be planning, but also I think partly about some level of transparency about what the thinking of the EB is in terms of going forward over the next sort of 2 or 3 years. But I think that the main things that I think that the want to talk about really are, you know, what are the principles we're trying to think about around the budget going forward. So I think obviously the first thing is, you know, is absolute commitment to continue to support our primary activities, and that is, you know, the maintenance and development of the existing standards, and all the sort of things that go around that, which is, you know, things like the infrastructure to support the consolidation of the product lines into pipelines, where we can manage them more effectively than we had done in the past. And I think that's been a really important part of the long-term sustainability of those products. And obviously, there is inevitably a need to have an organisation that has someone that is able to represent them and be on hand in a way. So that's what the Secretariat does. It has to be said that as an organisation, we have very thin resources in that area. If you look at something, other sort of similar or comparable standards organisations, we spend very little on a Secretariat, and I think that does limit our abilities to do some activities. So, you know, I think in the long term, I think that is something that I think the EB wants to be in a position to have a stronger Secretariat that gives us a bigger presence. And I think that the work that's been done with things like W3C and ISO and CODATA and so on are indicators that, you know, we need a firmer permanent stamp of activities to support that profile that perhaps we have had in the past. As Steve has mentioned, you know, we're starting a discussion about diversification of income to support particularly development activities where, you know, there can be costs, particularly around travel and the need to put people together to come up with new ideas and work on things. You know, remote is the new normal, but, you know, you do need people in the same room sometimes to move forward some of these activities, and that is quite a costly activity, which, you know, I think we're not. We just need to ensure that we keep an eye on that. But obviously, you know, if there's a clear need for those things, then that's something the EB is absolutely prepared to support and make sure that happens. And part of the way of doing that is to have an open call in each year to have what we call high value initiatives that are aligned with the strategic plan, to make it clear that, you know, that we're trying to maintain the day-to-day activities of the working groups and the governance and the Secretariat, but also, you know, there is a need sometimes for these additional activities, and that's what the priority fund really is aimed at supporting. Membership fees have not gone up for, I think, nearly 10 years. And obviously, you know, we can't just keep ramping fees up because many of our organisations are, you know, not in a great financial position, you know, for all sorts of reasons. The budget around science and infrastructures is not a massively expanding one, and political winds of, you know, as we've seen over the last few months, have been make some of those situations very difficult for small organisations. Other organisations who run on research funding, for instance, have 3-year budgets, and if we suddenly increase fees in the middle of that, then members won't be able to continue to participate in the same way. So we need to be mindful of that. So we want to signal, well, we're proposing effectively as part of this budget that we increase fees from 5% from next year, and then review it in a couple of years' time to see whether that can help a little bit to take the edge off the erosion of our finances through to inflation and other costs. The other areas Steve mentioned is around expanding membership. So in the budget proposal, we've got as indicative additional two members every year and 3 members in the 3rd year. That is actually on top of we've had 3 new members joining this year, which is really great news. So CSO are joining. It's great to see a stats agency that's really benefited from DDI Lifecycle, particularly to join the alliance. Recognition of the benefit they got from the standard as part of their core business. Joined by INED from Paris, and Dataverse have said they'll be joining as well. So those are really interesting membership joining from diverse areas, which I think is really reflects, I think, the diversity of the activities. And we hope to have to go and get some more members this year and then the following years. As Jared pointed out, we have got a healthy surplus, and we don't want to just cut our nose to spite our face. People understand that phraseology. So we want to use the surplus, or to have a cap on the surplus that's being reduced by about 10% of our income, to ensure that it's not eroded away too quickly, whilst we're trying to stabilise, increase membership, and grow the income source as well. And then finally, we will review the 3-year budget next year. Again, perhaps we may do another 3-year rolling budget, perhaps. I'm not sure yet, we haven't decided. But to try to give some transparency around what our plans are long term. And obviously, if there's a change in the circumstances that's good or bad, then I think that will be reflected in the new budget next year. So this is just a quick pie chart of where the money's going in the proposed budget. Again, as I say, the Secretariat is sucking out a lot of cash, but it's an absolutely necessary part of the running of a credible standards body. We've got a good, solid infrastructure. I think it's a good mix of trying to support the main activities, with about 1/3 of the money going to working groups to ensure that there's some development of the existing standards and development of things like training activities and so on. Some money for marketing to make sure, infrastructure to make sure that the standards are maintained, and we continue to ensure that they're easier to develop than they have been in the past. Activities around governance, support scientific boards and the technical committee, and also continue to support Dagstall, which is a source of innovation for the organisation, which is a massive, really fantastic opportunity to do that, supported by GASIS, who organise that activity. And then finally, there's a priority fund, which I mentioned earlier, to try to give a bit of flex on day-to-day activities as well. So I'm not going to do the whole line-by-line budget, but here's the top-level figures. So we are hoping that income will go up by around 25% over the next 3 years, which is, I think, feasible with increased membership and an increase in the minor increase in the membership fee, and we're trying to make sure that we have some increase in expenditure that this doesn't eat into the surplus too heavily as well. Okay, so I will stop there and I'll open the floor for any questions or comments. Good. Well, does that mean it's overwhelmingly endorsed? Someone, Steve.
John, I think probably one of the key points to make is, I mean, this is partly a question of, ensuring that there is a sort of a financial direction that recognizes we have a surplus, but we don't want to ruin the surplus at the same time. So it's how to find that appropriate balance between, and hence the previous discussion as well. There has been a downward trajectory in income, is the reality of what we had. So, we want to leverage the surplus that's there, but not in such a way that it would dissipate entirely. So it's like kind of trying to find a balance between those two things effectively, that we can continue to do some of what we do, put some money into trying to grow that that income base, but that if it is a financial sustainability intent as well. That if we keep spending at the level with the income levels we have, there is a long-term trajectory that's there. So it's trying to find an appropriate balance between those two things, I think, is part of the incentive here. But if we can expand the membership base, we can expand the income base, the trade-off of that is being able to then grow some of those areas as well, effectively.
Absolutely, thank you, Steve. Yeah, we have a healthy surplus, but a healthy surplus will disappear really quickly if we're not very careful. That's the situation we're in. Okay, has anyone got any other questions? Okay, I was expecting some more responses, but okay. Good. Okay. Jared, do you want to talk about the website updates and what's been going on with the work around the UX work on the new site?
Yeah. So can you see the website update? Okay, great. So I'm going to provide an update on the DDI Alliance website, covering the transition of technical hosting, progress and user experience improvements, and an important question about our publication section. So in December of 2024, we transitioned the technical hosting of the DDI website from ICPSR to the DDI Technical Committee. Previously, we looked at moving it to a vendor, and the Technical Committee stepped in and said that they would like to host it. And so that transition included migrating to a new server, setting up a dedicated hosting account, transferring responsibility for site maintenance, security, accessibility, and technical troubleshooting. So for site content, we've divided page updates. So the Technical Committee now owns product-related content, and then the Secretariat continues to manage content related to membership and communications. This is what the migrated site looks like today. It's using HubSpot after the initial lift and shift of the old Drupal site. And thanks again to the Technical Committee for taking on this technical hosting. After the shift to the new site, an ICPSR user experience consultant completed a comprehensive review of site content, navigation, and accessibility to identify friction points. What they heard was clear. Users were looking for simplified content, easier navigation, and more intuitive organization, especially for first-time visitors trying to understand what DDI is and how to use it. The designer took the feedback and created design templates then for several key sections. So these are examples. Here's a snapshot of a redesigned product page template. It prioritizes clarity and discoverability. They've streamlined descriptions and added visual anchors to help users find the product version, documentation, and support materials quickly. Here's a reimagined homepage mockup highlighting key resources and creating an immediate sense of what DDI offers. The new layout reduces clutter, centers on user needs, and adds search functionality, again, to address those issues that were noted in that initial review. So what's next in this UX improvements? We're calling it phase 2. So by the end of the summer, we plan to have that user experience designer conduct further user testing to finalize the content and the navigation structure, apply new web page templates site-wide, simplify content across major pages, and launch the redesigned homepage and search bar. So again, these are addressing those issues that users have told us this spring as well as previous years. This phase will ensure the updates we implement are based on real user behavior and not just us guessing what's needed. There's one big question that's come up, and it's a key decision point for us. Is the prior site included a section that cataloged DDI-related publications? These are working papers, posters, and workshops. There were, I want to say, over 1,100 citations that were in that list. That feature and functionality didn't make the initial migration. And so the question now is, do we want to continue maintaining a curated list of DDI-related publications? And if yes, who is willing to maintain it, including oversight of submissions and workflows? So this is an opportunity to align our communications and scholarship more tightly, but only if we have the resources and commitment to maintain it. And so I thought I would actually try using a poll, if I can do it. I'm going to launch it now. And so everyone here on this virtual meeting should see a poll. And if you can respond to that poll, it asks, should restoring the DDI publication section be a priority? And therefore response options: yes, high priority; yes, moderate priority; no, not a current priority; or not sure. So if you could just take a few minutes and respond to that poll, that'll help us assess what to do with the publication section. We'll also probably put a similar poll in the next newsletter. So I'll give you another minute. Okay, a few more seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll and then share the results so you can see them. I think everyone should see them. So according to this, 0 out of 13 said high priority. 8 out of 13 or 62% said moderate priority. 3 out of 13, 23% said no, it's not a current priority. And then 2 of the respondents said not sure. So again, more data points for us to consider. I should say for those who said it is a priority, if you want to, and if you're interested in maintaining this list of publications, add yourself to the comments field or reach out to us and let us know. Again, we're looking for people, if this is something we maintain, someone or multiple people who'd be willing to lead that. So I'm going to stop sharing. And that's it. Open for questions. If you have any on the website work, happy to take them right now.
Cool. Thank you, Jared. Is there any questions for Jared on the website?
Like Hilda has her hand raised.
Oh, sorry, Hilda.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, it's really great to see how this is developing. And do you have a kind of bug tracker? Because from time to time, yeah, there can be little bugs that occur, and then we could report back to you about it if we find something.
Yeah, so if you have technical issues with the site, if you want to reach out to the technical committee, they're maintaining that information. In terms of user experience interviews, the designer has reached out to several people for feedback. And you can also reach out to us if you have suggestions for UX design.
But there's
Okay,
also
thank you.
there's also the contact form on the website as well. If since you're there and so you see something, you can put something into the contact form, and that will get through to. I think that gets through to you, Jared, and someone on technical committee. I think is that correctly? Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, actually, and there's I believe there's one for everything else, but there's a standard form for filing issues and bugs, and that's a form that rolls over. It's a Google form and rolls over, and then it gets posted to the appropriate Jira tracker.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, certainly it was. It wasn't a straightforward job moving the existing Drupal site. There was a lot of historical documents of historical interest, but not necessarily of current interest on the website. So it's been a big job to clean that up and things. So that's been a help to try to clean up and make that site a bit more less confusing to use as well. So. Good. So did you? Oh, clapping. Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's the end. Is there any other business or anyone's got any things they want to raise or on anything they didn't get a chance to pick up on the earlier presentations, or have got any other comments, queries they want to use the remaining time to pick up on? Nope. Okay, well, thank you all for coming. It's been good to see a healthy turnout for the annual meeting. And well, no doubt we'll see many of you at other online meetings of working groups and so on during the year, and at any conferences that are coming up over the next 6 to 9 months. So thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, John.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.